Thanks for tuning in to the Diaphragm Dynasty. I'm back with another R&B topic as we do here on the Diaphragm Dynasty. Today I will be talking about an album that's very important to my listening career in music, especially in R&B. Now, Neo, before he popped on the scene, he was a songwriter, he was a producer, a lot of other things, and then he started to venture off into his solo career, which leads me to talk about his solo album, which is In My Own Words, a very fitting title for someone as a songwriter like he is, someone who's contributed a lot to the game before he even started his solo career, but to decide to, call his own number, so to speak, and put out his solo project. And he put many projects out after that. But this album specifically means a lot to me just for a bunch of different reasons, and I'll get into that just in a little bit. But as someone who works behind the scenes, it's very important once you get out to the solo front to show that you can do both, or you can do three, because he was a producer as well. So he was able to not only create for others, but create for himself. And that's the true nature of an artist, to be able to not just produce for yourself, but for others. And that's why I hold artists and producers and songwriters like Tank and Babyface in such a high light, because they're not just putting out things for them, but they're contributing to the genre, and overall, they're contributing to the success of the genre, which I'll talk about in another segment, the deterioration of the genre. And artists like Neo and Tank and Babyface and other artists like that, they contribute so much to just not only themselves but others, and the whole atmosphere of uh the music business. They benefit from this. So it's different levels to the artistry, and they definitely have that different level. And Neo is one of my favorite songwriters just because of what he contributes, and the quality that he puts out at such a high rate as well. But after listening to this album and discovering that he wrote Mario's "Let Me Love You," one of the best R&B songs we have, Marcus Houston's "That Girl," and a bunch of other songs for some pop artists and things like that. I wanted to know more about his artistry, and this album helped me understand his artistry and the perspectives that he writes from, the unique perspective that he writes from. And he talked about it before, about being able to talk to women about their issues and things they go through, and he can be able to tell a story like no other. So his storytelling sets him apart from most songwriters, whether it be R&B, hip hop, pop, country, gospel, whatever. His storytelling is amazing. Just off hearing your problems or your issues, or seeing a problem and issue, and being able to relate it to the listeners. And that's very important to do, because everyone can tell their own story, but to be able to tell somebody else's story is that's a very unique skill set, and a very beneficial skill set that not a lot of people are blessed with. So you always have to show some kind of appreciation, or a higher appreciation, for those people who can story tell not just their stories, but other people's stories, and be able to put it in such eloquent words that we can all relate to. So having that relatability is very important as well. But after this debut album, In My Own Words, is he did not disappoint with the product that he put out, and it seemed very thoughtful, and the production and all of the songs, sounded very concise and sounded very intentional. It almost sounded like a concept album of going through hurt and love, and repeating it and rinsing it all over again. So 'cause some of the songs, um, a lot of the songs was R&B driven. Some could be considered pop, but for the most part, it was genuine R&B. It felt like an album that was supposed to be released somewhere in the '90s, but this album was released around, I believe, '06, '05. And I do remember this album vividly. Um, hearing this album changed the way I listen to music. Listening to '90s R&B, which is considered the golden era of R&B. This this music, I thought, would rejuvenate the the marketplace for R&B. It did for a short amount of time, and then I'll get into another segment why I believe that it kind of didn't continue to go that way of the momentum that Neo and others set during this time. But this album was, about love and love loss, and it's about, just finding his true self. And I believe he found his true self with this album because he only got better with time. And it wasn't much hip hop influence on this album other than the Get Down Like That remix with Ghostface Killer. But the rest of the album was, it only had like one other feature, and I believe it was PD PD on the intro song. But the rest of the songs were pretty much just him, just getting his point across. And this album had the lead single "So Sick," which was the lead single. Most people know Neo from this song, and this song, I guess you can consider it in a way a pop song, just for the crossover appeal it had, and how popularized this song was. Everyone back then had the ringtones of this song or had it on their voicemails. So this song was very influential and very popular around this time, around 0506, and it pretty much set the tone for Neo and people knowing about Neo, and it put him out there in that spotlight. Because being a songwriter, it'll get your music out there, but it won't get your name out there. But this So Six song got his name out there, in the forefront. Instead of just being in the credits of the albums and things like that, but people actually began to know the name Neo, and he took it to a whole nother level from there. He just needed that opportunity, which he provided for himself. Um, and then he followed that up with "When You're Mad," which was another great single, a very passionate song that kind of talked about the ins and out of relationships and things like that. So he just built upon what he was already doing, and he continued to do that with songs like "Sexy Love," "Mirror," "Time," which is one of my favorite songs. It's a very slow paced song that, one of those eclectic or one of those eccentric type songs that you have that, more neo soul type feels to it. But that song was kind of different from the rest of the songs on the album because the rest of the songs on the album were basically love, passion, and things like that. This song was just talking about love, loss, and regret. I think this song would actually work better if he gave it to, one of those pop stars like a Maroon 5 or somebody like that. But nevertheless, the song still was captivating, and it captivated me as a listener just because of the content on the song, and the song, teaching you, learning from someone else's mistakes. And that's what big thing of this album was learning from other people's mistakes, especially when it comes to being in love and falling in love and things like that. So, but one of my favorite songs on the album was to Get Down Like That remix, probably because Ghostface Killer, I like his music, and I think he meshed well with Neo, and it made sense for the song. But it didn't mess up the song by having him on the song because sometimes those collabs don't go as well. But this collab was perfect, especially for this album and what he was trying to do. But this album just put the world on notice, like I said before, about the R&B game and what Neo was doing. And then he started writing for Beyonce and Rihanna, and he just went up to another level. But definitely one of the best songwriters and song storytellers of our time and of all time. So if you haven't checked out Neo's, in my own words, definitely check it out. Until next time, I'll see you next time.